The helicopter's rotors cut through the Syrian night like blades through silk. The rhythm steady until the RPG turned everything into chaos and fire. The Black Hawk spun, metal screaming, men shouting, the desert rushing up to meet them with the inevitability of death itself. SEAL Team 9 hit the ground hard, the impact scattering 47 of America's finest warriors across sand that had drunk the blood of empires for 5,000 years. Lieutenant Jake Morrison pressed his back against the compound wall, feeling the ancient stone dig into his spine through his tactical vest. 12 Wagner Group snipers had them zeroed in. 12 professional killers with high ground advantage and modern optics, picking off his men like it was sport, like it was easy. "Command, this is Reaper 1 Actual," Morrison spoke into his radio, voice steady despite the copper taste of fear in his mouth. "We are combat ineffective. Repeat, combat ineffective. Ammunition at 15%, casualties mounting. We need extraction, and we need it now." The radio crackled, static. Then a voice, calm and measured, the kind of calm that came from air-conditioned offices thousands of miles from dying men. "Reaper 1 Actual. Extraction is not possible under current enemy fire. You need counter-sniper support to suppress hostile overwatch positions." Morrison looked at the bodies. 3 already. Good men. Men with families. Men who believed the mission mattered. "Command, we don't have counter-sniper assets. We don't have anything. We're pinned down and we're dying." Silence. Long enough that Morrison thought the connection had been lost. Then the voice again, different this time, hesitant, like someone remembering something they tried very hard to forget. "There might be one option, but she's been dark for 7 years. We don't even know if she's alive. I don't care if she's a goddamn ghost. If she can shoot, I need her." Another pause. Morrison could hear the discussion happening on the other end. Voices arguing. Then finally, a decision. Her call sign was Wraith 7. 247 confirmed kills, longest confirmed shot on record. If we can find her, if she agrees to come back, she's your only chance. Morrison pressed tighter against the wall as another bullet sparked off the stone 2 inches from his head. "Then find her, because in 6 hours, there won't be anyone left to save." The radio went dead. Morrison closed his eyes. Wraith 7. He'd heard the stories. Every SEAL had. The ghost who could shoot through walls. The legend who made impossible shots look routine. The warrior who walked away at the height of her powers and disappeared into America like smoke into air. If the stories were true, she was their only hope. If the stories were true, she was already gone. The sound of glass breaking has a particular quality at 1:15 in the morning. Sharp, violent, deliberate. The beer bottle shattered against the wooden floor of Garrison's Tavern, sending amber shards skittering across planks that had absorbed 40 years of spilled drinks and broken dreams. The 5 Marines who'd stayed past closing time weren't leaving. They'd made that clear when they'd started ordering shots they had no intention of paying for. Kate Reeves didn't flinch. Her hand continued its methodical path across the bar's surface, the cleaning rag moving in precise, overlapping circles that left no spot untouched. Muscle memory from another life. Everything she did now was muscle memory from another life. "Look what we got here, brothers." Staff Sergeant Brennan Caldwell's voice carried the particular slur of a man who'd had 6 drinks past his limit and still thought he was making good decisions. 6'3", 220 pounds of Marine Corps infantry, swaying slightly as he pushed off from his barstool. His uniform was rumpled, the eagle globe and anchor insignia sitting crooked on his collar like a drunk trying to stand straight. Little bartender's got herself some military ink. He'd spotted the tattoo. Kate had known he would eventually. The Navy SEAL trident on her right forearm, partially visible when her sleeve rode up during the constant motion of cleaning. Most people didn't notice. Most people didn't look at bartenders long enough to notice anything beyond whether their glass was full. But Marines noticed. Marines always noticed. Kate set down the glass she'd been polishing. Her green eyes remained focused on the bar's surface, tracking the grain of the wood like it held secrets. But her peripheral vision, that hyper-developed awareness that never truly went away, cataloged everything. 5 Marines. Brennan Caldwell, 29. Aggressive posture, dominant hand resting near his belt where a knife would be if he were deployed. Corporal Jameson Thatcher, 27, technical specialist, analyzing her with the cold precision of someone who dismantled problems for a living. Lance Corporal Reese Donovan, 25, shorter but stocky, blocking the main exit with his bulk. Private First Class Elliot Vaughn, 22, nervous energy radiating off him like heat, positioned near the emergency door. And Corporal Sloan Merrick, 28, the only woman in the group, studying Kate with the particular contempt reserved for those who violated the sacred brotherhood of military service. Bet she thinks some ink makes her special, Brennan continued, taking another step forward. His boots, parade ground shiny despite the hour and the alcohol, clicked against the floor. Bet she thinks playing warrior princess gets her bigger tips from the real heroes. Kate's silence seemed to embolden him. It usually did. Silence was often mistaken for weakness by men who'd never learned the difference between quiet and harmless. Jameson moved to the bar, setting his Beretta M9 down with deliberate care. The weapon gleamed under the bar's low lights, oil slick and predatory. He was showing off, establishing dominance, proving he was the one with the real credentials. "If you're such a badass military woman," Jameson said, his voice carrying the particular condescension of someone who believed knowledge was ownership, "you should know your way around weapon systems. Tell me what this takes." "Bet you can't." Kate's eyes flicked to the weapon for exactly 1 second. The length of time it took to catalog every relevant detail: barrel length, wear patterns, carbon buildup around the chamber, the slight looseness of the grip screws that indicated poor maintenance. 9 by 19 millimeter parabellum, she said quietly, her voice carrying a slight rasp, like she wasn't used to speaking much. 15-round magazine capacity, effective range 50 meters. You've got carbon fouling on the barrel. Haven't cleaned it in at least 3 weeks. The grip screws are loose. The weapon will lose accuracy after sustained fire. The response landed like a flashbang in a quiet room. Jameson's mouth opened, closed, opened again. "Lucky guess," he finally managed. "Anyone can memorize Wikipedia articles." But his voice had lost its certainty, and Brennan had noticed. The big sergeant moved closer, close enough now that Kate could smell the whiskey on his breath. Old Crow, bottom shelf, the kind of cheap that burned going down and made you mean afterward. His hand reached out, fingers closing around her wrist with enough force to make a point without quite crossing into pain. "Let me see that fake ink up close," he said. The moment his skin made contact with hers, something shifted in the air. Later, Brennan would remember this moment, would replay it in his mind during long, sleepless nights, would wonder how he'd been so blind. Kate's other hand came up, not fast, not aggressive, but with the unconscious precision of deeply ingrained training. A guard position. Her body shifted, weight redistributing from flat-footed service industry stance to something else entirely. Left foot forward, right foot back, balanced on the balls of her feet, ready to move in any direction. Her shoulders squared. Her breathing didn't change, still steady, still controlled, but her stillness transformed from passive to predatory. It lasted less than a second. Then Kate deliberately relaxed, let Brennan maintain his grip, let him think he was in control. But Jameson had seen it, and Jameson's technical mind was already processing the implications. "Interesting," Brennan said, though uncertainty flickered across his features like lightning behind clouds. "You've had some McDojo self-defense classes. Won't help you here, sweetheart." From his corner booth, the old man had been watching in silence. He'd been there since 5 that afternoon, nursing whiskeys and reading a book with yellowed pages. the kind of presence that became part of the furniture. But now he set down his glass with the careful deliberation of someone who'd made a decision. Colonel Nathaniel Garrison was 71 years old. His face was a topographical map of hard living and harder memories, the kind of face you earn through decades of looking at things most people only saw in nightmares. His right leg, the one that had taken shrapnel during the Highway of Death in 1991, made him walk with a slight hitch that became more pronounced as the day wore on. He stood, the movement drawing every eye in the room. "Bars closed, Marines," Garrison said, his voice carrying the gravel of a man who'd breathed too much desert sand and gun smoke. "Time to head back to base." Brennan didn't even turn. "This is between us and the stolen valor case here, old man. Why don't you go back to your drinking and let us handle this?" Garrison's hand moved behind the bar, fingers finding the baseball bat he kept there. Louisville slugger, Ashwood, from his playing days before the first Gulf War, had changed everything. But he didn't pull it out. Not yet. "Son," Garrison said, and now his voice carried a different quality, something harder, something that had seen the elephant and walked away scarred but standing. "You have no idea what you're stepping in. Last chance to walk away with your pride intact." Reese Donovan laughed from his position, blocking the exit. "Old man's got spirit. Too bad spirit doesn't mean shit when you're outnumbered." Kate had continued cleaning during this exchange, her rag moving in those same precise circles. But anyone paying attention, and Jameson was paying attention now, would notice she never turned her back fully to any of them. Never let her hands be occupied for more than a few seconds at a time. Never position herself without at least 2 escape routes clearly available. These were not the movements of a bartender. These were the movements of someone who'd operated in places where situational awareness meant the difference between going home and going home in a box. Sloan moved closer. "You really think someone built like that could handle SEAL training? Hell, the physical standards alone would break her in half. I've been through Marine Corps infantry training. I've earned my place. But SEAL training? That's a whole different level. And you expect me to believe this little bartender survived it?" Kate's phone, sitting on the bar, suddenly buzzed. The screen lit up with an incoming message, the notification showing an icon that made Garrison's weathered hand pause on the bat handle. A black trident over a gray shield. Military-grade encryption. The kind of secure messaging that Special Operations Forces use for sensitive communications. The kind that wasn't available at your local Verizon store. Kate glanced at the message for exactly 2 seconds. Her expression didn't change. Then she deleted it with a practiced swipe and set the phone face down on the bar. But Garrison had seen enough, and the pieces were falling into place in his mind, like mortar rounds finding their range. Brennan's patience, what little remained after 6 shots of Old Crow, finally ran out completely. His grip on Kate's wrist tightened, and he yanked her arm toward him, pulling hard enough to make her stumble forward against the bar. "Let me see this fake tattoo up close," he growled. His hand caught the fabric of her shirt sleeve. Pulled. The old cotton, worn soft from years of washing, tore with the sharp sound of surrender. And everything changed. The full tattoo sleeve on Kate's right arm was now completely visible under the bar's lights. It wasn't some flash art from a strip mall parlor. This was custom work, professional grade, the kind that cost thousands of dollars and required multiple sessions with an artist who understood military iconography. The Navy SEAL trident dominated the upper forearm, rendered in precise detail that captured every eagle feather, every anchor fluke, every element of the insignia that represented the most elite warriors in the American military. But it was the text surrounding the trident that made the room go silent. Wraith 7, Dev grew gold. Kia 247/WIA 4. Below that, a list of operations and years. Fallujah 2011, Ramadi 2012 to 13, Kandahar 2014, Crimson Dawn 2015. The tattoo wasn't the only thing visible now. Kate's torn shirt revealed scars. multiple scars, a puckered bullet wound near her collarbone, the distinctive starburst pattern of shrapnel wounds across her ribs, the clean line of a knife slash along her shoulder. Each mark told a story of violence survived. Each mark was a receipt for payment made in blood, in pain. Brennan's hand fell away from her wrist like he grabbed a hot wire. The silence stretched, became physical, became a presence in the room that pressed down on everyone with the weight of understanding. Jameson pulled out his phone with shaking hands, his fingers navigating to a military database he had access to through his technical specialist credentials. He typed in search parameters, his face going progressively paler with each result. Reeves, K, he read aloud, his voice barely above a whisper. Petty Officer First Class, SEAL Team 7, operational years 2011 through 2019. Status. He paused, reading the screen again like he couldn't believe what he was seeing. Status, classified. Most files, redacted. Security clearance required for access. Top secret/SCI. Sloane had gone completely still, her earlier contempt transforming into something that looked uncomfortably like horror. Her voice, when she finally found it, came out small and broken. Women weren't allowed in SEAL training in 2011. It's impossible. You're lying. But even as she said it, she knew it wasn't true. You couldn't fake scars like that. You couldn't fake the muscle memory that had Kate's body automatically shifting into combat stances. You couldn't fake the particular way she held herself, the controlled breathing, the constant awareness, the economy of movement that spoke of years operating in environments where wasted motion could get you killed. Garrison had moved during the revelation, reaching behind the bar to pull out a photograph. The frame was old, the glass scratched from decades of handling, but the image was clear enough. Kuwait, February 1991. A group of Marines, faces streaked with sand and exhaustion, standing in front of a shot-up convoy, burning vehicles in the background, smoke rising into a sky the color of old bruises. And off to the side, slightly separated from the main group, a single figure in desert camouflage, face pixelated for security reasons, holding a sniper rifle like it was an extension of their body. Highway of Death, Garrison said quietly, his voice thick with memory. February 26, 1991. My convoy got ambushed during the retreat from Kuwait City. 40 Marines trapped in a kill zone. Iraqi Republican Guard had the high ground, heavy weapons, numerical superiority. We were dead. Every tactical assessment said we were dead. He set the photograph on the bar, his weathered finger pointing to the pixelated figure. One sniper held the ridge for 11 hours. 134 confirmed kills. Saved every single one of us. They called him Wraith 1. His real name was Chief Petty Officer Marcus Reeves. Garrison looked at Kate, and his eyes held something that might have been tears if he were the kind of man who cried. Your father was the finest warrior I ever served with. He died 2 months before you were born. Never got to meet his daughter. Never got to see what you became. Kate's hand had moved unconsciously to her forearm, fingers tracing the numbers inked into her skin. 247. 247 confirmed kills. 247 faces that visited her in the early morning hours when sleep wouldn't come and the whiskey had stopped working. He saved 40 men that day, Kate said, her voice steady despite the emotion threatening to crack it. I read the after-action reports, classified, sealed, buried, but I found them. 11 hours, 134 kills, shot count so high that command thought it was exaggerated until they counted the bodies. She looked at Garrison, really looked at him, seeing past the old man to the young Marine who'd survived because of her father's skill. He never came home, never held me, never taught me to ride a bike or scared off my first boyfriend, or walked me down any aisle. All I got was his legacy, his call sign, his expectations. She pulled her sleeve down, covering the tattoo again, though the image was already burned into everyone's retinas. I became Wraith 7, sixth generation of family military tradition going back to the Revolution, and I tried to be worthy of the name. 247 confirmed kills across 4 deployments. I tried to make him proud. You succeeded, Garrison said simply. The door to the tavern burst open with enough force to make everyone jump. Everyone except Kate, who simply shifted her weight slightly, her body automatically positioning to face the new potential threat. 2 figures entered. The first wore civilian clothes, jeans, a simple sweater, but carried herself with unmistakable military bearing. The second wore full navy dress blues, the uniform so heavily decorated with ribbons and insignia that it was immediately clear this was someone of significant rank. Commander Victoria Hastings, even in civilian clothes, radiated the kind of authority that came from leading warriors in combat. 46 years old, hard as coffin nails, with eyes that had seen men die and made the calls that sent them into the situations where dying became possible. Behind her, Captain Darius Blackwood wore his dress blues like armor. 52 years old, Navy SEAL trident over his left breast pocket, ribbons that told a story of 3 decades spent in the world's worst places, doing the things that kept civilization from sliding into chaos. Both of them looked at Kate, and then, in perfect synchronization, they saluted. Not the casual greeting between officers, a full, formal salute. The kind rendered to heroes, the kind that acknowledged service beyond the normal bounds of duty. Kate stood a little straighter, her hand coming up automatically to return the salute, despite her torn shirt and civilian status. For a moment, the bartender facade fell away completely, and everyone in the room could see what she really was. A warrior, a legend, someone who had walked through hell and come back scarred but unbroken. Petty Officer Reeves, Commander Hastings said formally, though her eyes carried something that looked like fury as she took in the torn shirt and the 5 Marines standing in obvious guilt. We received your emergency beacon activation. Kate's hand moved unconsciously to her phone, the encrypted device that had buzzed earlier. She'd activated a distress signal when Brennan had grabbed her wrist. Automatic response. Muscle memory from years of operating in hostile territory where backup was always one transmission away. I'm retired, Commander, Kate said quietly. No one retires from what you are, Captain Blackwood said, his voice carrying the weight of personal experience. They just take extended leave. The 5 Marines were now standing at rigid attention, their training overriding their shock and alcohol. You didn't slouch when officers of this caliber were present. You didn't make excuses. You stood straight and prepared for the consequences of your actions. Hastings's gaze swept over them like a laser designator painting targets. Would someone care to explain why 5 United States Marines are threatening a decorated Navy SEAL veteran in a civilian establishment? Brennan's voice came out strangled. Ma'am, we didn't know. The tattoo looked, we thought she was, you thought a small woman couldn't possibly be a SEAL, Hastings cut him off. You saw what you expected to see instead of what was actually there. You let assumptions and ego override your judgment. She pulled out a tablet, swiping through files with practiced ease. The screen showed classified documents, most of it redacted black bars, but enough visible to paint a picture. Reeves, Caitlin Ann, Petty Officer First Class, Navy SEAL, Buds Class 287, graduated 2011, first woman to ever complete the training, though that fact was classified under Project Valkyrie for operational security. She swiped to another page, her voice taking on the particular cadence of someone reading official records. Navy Cross, classified, longest confirmed shot on record, 2,847 meters. That's 1.76 miles. She made a shot across nearly 2 miles and hit a target the size of a dinner plate in conditions that most snipers would consider impossible. Captain Blackwood stepped forward. 531 rounds fired over 22 hours during Operation Crimson Dawn, 218 confirmed kills. Every SEAL extracted alive. The room had gone beyond silent. This was the silence of people realizing they'd made a mistake so profound that words couldn't adequately capture it. Brennan slowly reached up and began removing his sergeant's chevrons from his collar. "Ma'am, I'll report myself to command in the morning. Assault on a veteran, conduct unbecoming, threatening behavior. I'll accept whatever punishment." "Stop." Kate's voice wasn't loud, but it carried command. The kind of natural authority that came from leading warriors in situations where hesitation meant death. Brennan's hands froze on his insignia. "You made assumptions based on ego and alcohol," Kate said. "You failed to see what was in front of you because it didn't match your expectations. These are failures of perception and judgment, not character." She walked around the bar, moving with that economy of motion that marked her as something other than civilian. She stopped in front of Brennan, looking up at the man who topped her by nearly a foot. "But you can learn from this. You can be better." She reached into her pocket and pulled out something small and metallic. A challenge coin. Navy SEAL challenge coin, worn smooth from years of handling. On one side, the SEAL trident. On the other, an inscription. "For honor and valor, Admiral W. McCraven." She held it out to Brennan. "Admiral McCraven gave this to me after a mission I can't discuss, in a place I was never at, doing things that never officially happened. He told me that the truest form of service is the service no one ever knows about, the sacrifices that can't be acknowledged." Brennan stared at the coin like it was a holy relic. "I can't take this," he said. "I don't deserve—" "No," Kate agreed. "Not yet. But someday you might. Someday you might be in a position where you have to choose between what's easy and what's right, between your ego and someone else's welfare, between assumptions and truth." She pressed the coin into his hand. "When that day comes, remember tonight. Remember that the most dangerous warrior you ever met was a 5'4" bartender who chose to serve drinks instead of serving death. Remember that respect isn't given. It's earned through action, not appearance." She turned to Sloane, who was crying silently, tears streaming down her face. "You asked why I hide," Kate said. "I don't hide. I choose. I choose to be something other than a weapon. I choose to live a life where my worth isn't measured in confirmed kills. I choose to see if Kate Reeves can exist beyond Wraith 7. Commander Hastings stepped forward, her expression softening slightly. "Speaking of which," she said, "we should discuss the reason we're actually here tonight." She pulled out her own tablet, showing satellite imagery. Syrian desert, compound complex, and surrounding it, marked in red, 12 enemy positions. 72 hours ago, SEAL Team 9 encountered unexpected resistance during an operation in eastern Syria. They're pinned down in an abandoned compound. Ammunition at 15%, casualties mounting. Wagner Group has them surrounded with approximately 148 fighters and 12 professional snipers in hardened positions. She zoomed in on the sniper positions. These aren't amateurs. Wagner Group recruits former Russian Spetsnaz, ex-military from a dozen countries. They know what they're doing. They've got overlapping fields of fire, mutual support positions, modern equipment, and they're systematically eliminating Team 9. Kate studied the imagery, her mind already calculating distances, angles, wind patterns. The part of her that was Wraith 7 was waking up, pushing aside Kate Reeves, the bartender, with frightening ease. "How long do they have?" she asked. 6 hours, Captain Blackwood said. "After that, they're overrun." He showed another image, a radio transcript. This came through encrypted channels 4 hours ago, from Team 9's commander. Kate read the words on the screen. "Request immediate counter-sniper support. 12 hostile overwatch positions. Need someone who can make impossible shots. Request Wraith 7 by name, if still operational." She looked up at Hastings and Blackwood. "You want me to go back?" 47 American operators are dying in the Syrian desert, Hastings said quietly. They asked for you specifically, not because we have no other options, we do, but because those other options aren't good enough. The shots required, they're not just difficult, Kate, they're impossible. At least impossible for anyone except you. Kate's phone buzzed again. Another encrypted message. She read it, and something flickered across her face. Not fear, not excitement. Something more complicated. Something that looked like resignation mixed with purpose. She looked at Garrison, the old man who'd given her a job when she'd needed to disappear, who'd asked no questions and demanded nothing except honest work, who'd protected her secret for 7 years. I swore I'd never kill again, Kate said. Garrison moved from behind the bar, his bad leg making him favor his right side. He stood in front of Kate, this old warrior looking at the young one, both of them carrying weight that civilians could never understand. Your father saved 40 men on the highway of death, Garrison said. 11 hours of hell, 134 confirmed kills. He did it because it was necessary, because good men needed someone willing to be a weapon so they could go home to their families. He put his weathered hand on Kate's shoulder. Now 47 men need you to do the same. They need Wraith 7. Not for glory, not for recognition, for survival. Kate looked at the challenge coin in Brennan's hand, then at the 5 Marines who'd learned a lesson tonight about assumptions and respect, then at Hastings and Blackwood, who represented the life she'd tried to leave behind. Finally, she looked at her phone, at the message that showed 47 faces depending on a woman they'd never met to save their lives. She picked up her phone and made a call. This is Wraith 7, she said, and her voice carried the particular tone that came from years of giving orders in life or death situations. I need my rifle, and I need it now. The C-130 Hercules transport climbed through California night, engines droning with the particular rhythm that marked military aviation. Steady, relentless, carrying cargo that mattered toward destinations that didn't officially exist. Kate sat alone in the cargo bay, surrounded by equipment cases and the ghosts of every mission she'd tried to leave behind. 7 years. 7 years of pouring drinks and pretending the nightmares were getting better. 7 years of telling herself that Kate Reeves, the bartender, was real, and Wraith 7 was just a story she'd once lived. 7 years of lying to herself with increasing desperation. The lies had ended the moment she'd opened that weapons case. Her rifle lay across her lap now, and touching it was like greeting an old friend who knew all your worst secrets. Custom-built Accuracy International in 338 Lapua Magnum, the barrel hand-selected for consistency, the trigger adjusted to break at exactly 3 pounds of pressure, the stock modified to fit her smaller frame perfectly. This wasn't just a weapon, this was an extension of her will, a tool through which she'd reached across impossible distances to touch the enemy with precision and finality. She'd named it once, years ago, called it Caleb's Promise. But she didn't say the name anymore. Saying it made the memories too vivid. Commander Hastings sat across from her, tablet in hand, reviewing mission parameters with the clinical detachment of someone who'd sent warriors into hell enough times to develop emotional calluses. Captain Blackwood stood near the loadmaster station, talking quietly into a satellite phone, coordinating assets that Kate would never see, but that would determine whether she lived through the next 24 hours. Tell me about Crimson Dawn, Hastings said suddenly, Kate's hands stilled on the rifle. Her fingers had been running through maintenance checks automatically, muscle memory so deep it didn't require conscious thought. But now they stopped, frozen on the Bolt carrier group. That's classified, Kate said. I was your commander, Hastings replied. I wrote the after-action report. I know what happened. What I don't know is what you remember, what you carry. Kate looked at the woman who'd once been Lieutenant Commander Hastings, her CO during that deployment. The woman who'd testified on her behalf during the court-martial, who'd sacrificed her own career advancement to stand up for a subordinate who'd refused a direct order. Why does it matter now? Because in 6 hours, you're going to be alone on a Syrian ridgeline with 12 professional killers trying to find you. Because the last time you were in a similar situation, you lost your spotter and spent 22 hours convinced you were going to die. Because I need to know if you're still the woman who can make impossible shots, or if 7 years of bartending has dulled the edge we need. Kate's jaw tightened, but Hastings was right. She was always right. That's why she'd made commander despite the political damage from defending Kate. Afghanistan, Kate said quietly. October 2015. I was 23 years old and convinced I was immortal. The cargo bay seemed to fade as memory overtook present. Kate's eyes lost focus, seeing not the gray military interior, but the browns and tans of Hindu Kush mountains under a sky the color of old blood. Operation Crimson Dawn had started as a straightforward, high-value target extraction. Intelligence said a Taliban commander with information on planned attacks against NATO forces was willing to defect. Team 7's job was simple. Get in, get him, get out. 3 hours, maximum exposure. Intelligence was wrong. The Taliban commander was willing to defect, but he'd failed to mention the 280 fighters loyal to him who very much did not want him leaving. The moment Team 7's helicopters touched down in the valley, the mountains erupted with gunfire. 38 SEALs suddenly found themselves in a kill zone with no air support. Weather had turned, clouds so thick that helicopters couldn't navigate, and close air support couldn't identify targets without hitting friendlies. Command's response had been immediate and brutal in its honesty. Hold position. Weather clears in 12 hours. You're on your own until then. 12 hours was forever in combat. Kate and her spotter, Chief Petty Officer Caleb Rourke, had been positioned on an eastern ridgeline as overwatch. Their job was to provide early warning and cover fire if extraction went wrong, which meant when everything went catastrophically wrong, they were the only ones with clear fields of fire and the elevation advantage necessary to keep the surrounded SEALs alive. Caleb was the best spotter I ever worked with, Kate said, her voice distant. He could read wind like he was born to it, could judge distance by eye, and be within 5 meters at 1,000 yards. Had this way of staying calm that made you believe everything would be okay, even when the world was ending. She paused, fingers unconsciously moving to the spot on her collarbone where the bullet wound scar lived. Hour 1, he took a round through the chest. 7.62 millimeter, probably from a Dragunov. Entry wound right side, exited left. Sucking chest wound. I could hear the air whistling through the hole in his lung every time he tried to breathe. Hastings didn't interrupt, didn't offer platitudes, just listened with the patience of someone who understood that some stories had to be told at their own pace. I had a choice, Kate continued. Stop shooting, provide medical aid, maybe save Caleb. But the 38 SEALs in the valley would die. All of them. The Taliban had them zeroed in, and without my covering fire, they'd be overrun in minutes. Her hands resumed their movement on the rifle, checking and rechecking systems that she knew were perfect. Or I could keep shooting, keep the Taliban pinned down, keep my brothers alive, and let Caleb die next to me. The cargo bay was silent except for the drone of engines. I chose the mission. I kept shooting. And Caleb kept spotting. Even with a hole in his chest and his lung collapsing and blood filling his throat, he kept calling corrections. Wind 3 miles per hour from the northwest. Target bearing 027, range 1,800 meters. Adjust 2 clicks left, 1 click up. Kate's voice had gone flat, empty of emotion in the way that came from reliving trauma so many times that the feelings had been worn smooth. He died in hour 4. Stopped talking mid-sentence. I was lining up a shot and he said, "Wind's shifting to," and then nothing. Just stopped, like someone had flipped a switch. She looked at Hastings directly now, and her eyes held something that might have been tears if Kate Reeves still knew how to cry. I kept shooting for 18 more hours, 493 rounds after Caleb died. 218 confirmed kills total across the whole engagement. The Taliban kept coming, and I kept putting them down. My shoulder dislocated in hour 9 from the sustained recoil. Couldn't lift my right arm anymore. So I taught myself to shoot left-handed. Right there, in the middle of the firefight, I switched shoulders and kept going. Hastings nodded slowly. She'd read this in the after-action report, but reading and hearing were different things. When extraction finally arrived, Kate continued, I'd been awake for 36 hours straight, dehydrated, hypothermic, shoulder destroyed, and Caleb was still lying next to me, eyes open, staring at nothing. The medevac team had to pry my rifle out of my hands. I didn't want to let it go. Thought if I kept holding it, kept shooting, I could change what had happened. She paused, running her thumb along the rifle's stock. They extracted all 38 SEALs alive. Not a single fatality among them. Caleb was the only one who died. The only one. And then command asked you to keep killing, Hastings said quietly. Kate's expression hardened. We got back to the firebase, and I was running on nothing but adrenaline and rage. Command called me in, congratulated me on the confirmed kill count, told me we had reliable intelligence on a Taliban convoy leaving the area, 70+ fighters, said I should get my rifle and take up position, eliminate as many as possible while they were exposed. She shook her head, the memory clearly still raw despite the years. I went to the position, set up the rifle, ranged the convoy, had perfect conditions, clear weather, minimal wind, targets in the open, could have killed 50, maybe 60 before they found cover. Easy shots, target practice. Her hands tightened on the rifle. And I couldn't do it. They were retreating, running away, no longer a threat to anyone. And I kept hearing Caleb's voice, his last words, the ones he never got to finish. Wind shifting too, like he was still trying to help me make the shot, still trying to do his job, even in death. Kate's voice had dropped to barely above a whisper. I called command, told them I had the targets. They gave me the order, engage at will, maximum casualties. And you refused, Hastings said. I told them no, said engaging fleeing targets who posed no imminent threat was murder, not combat, that I wouldn't dishonor Caleb's sacrifice by becoming an executioner, that Wraith 7 was going weapons cold. Kate looked at Hastings with defiance that hadn't dimmed in 7 years. They court-martialed me, insubordination, refusing a direct order in a combat zone, conduct unbecoming, the works, wanted to make an example, show that special operators didn't get to decide which orders they followed. I remember, Hastings said, I was still your CO. They threatened me, said if I testified on your behalf, I'd be finished. No promotion, no command positions, dead-end career. You testified anyway. Of course I did. You were right. The order was wrong. Just because something is legal under rules of engagement doesn't make it moral. Kate managed a small, bitter smile. The charges were dropped after Team 7 raised hell. Turns out 38 SEALs who you saved are pretty motivated to return the favor. But the damage was done. I was radioactive. No unit would take me. Command made it clear. Resign gracefully, or we'll make your life hell until you do. She set the rifle down carefully, treating it with the reverence it deserved. So I resigned, walked away from Wraith 7, became Kate Reeves, civilian, thought I could leave the killing behind, thought I could be something other than a weapon. But you can't, Hastings said. It wasn't a question. I killed 247 people, Kate replied. 247 faces. I know some of their names. Research them afterward. Ahmad Hassan, Taliban mid-level commander, 3 children. Rashid Mahmoud, bomb maker, but also a school teacher before the war. Yusuf al-Din, 19 years old, probably conscripted, definitely terrified. Her voice had gone hollow. They were enemy combatants, legitimate military targets, Every shot was justified under the laws of war. But they were also human beings, sons, fathers, brothers, people with lives and families and futures I erased with a trigger pull. She looked at her hands like they belonged to someone else. How do you live with that? How do you wake up every morning and pretend you're normal when you've killed more people than most infantry companies? When you've done it from so far away, they never even knew you were there. Hastings leaned forward, her voice gentle but firm. You live with it by understanding why you did it. Caleb died so 38 men could live. You killed 247 so thousands could sleep safely. That's the burden we carry, the weight of necessary violence. But when does it stop being necessary? Kate asked. When does the warrior become just a killer? Hastings held Kate's gaze. That question, right there, is what separates you from the people you hunt. Warriors ask that question. Killers never do. Kate nodded slowly, the answer settling something inside her. But the understanding between them needed no further words. She stood, moving to her gear bag. She pulled out something she'd carried for 7 years, but never had the courage to open. A sealed envelope, yellowed with age, the handwriting on the front faded but still legible. To my daughter, if I don't come home. Garrison gave me this 2 years ago, Kate said quietly. Said my father handed it to him in Kuwait, February 1991. 2 weeks before he died. I've never opened it. Couldn't. Reading it would make his death real in a way I wasn't ready for. She looked at Hastings. But if I'm going back to being Wraith 7, if I'm going to kill 12 more people in his name, I need to know what he wanted me to understand. Her fingers trembled as she broke the seal. The paper inside was brittle, the ink faded, but the words were clear. My dearest daughter, if you're reading this, I didn't make it home to meet you. I'm writing this from a foxhole in Kuwait, and I need you to know something before the next fight. Being Wraith isn't about how many you kill. It's about knowing when to stop killing. Today I held a ridge for 11 hours, 134 confirmed. Command wanted me to keep shooting in hour 12, had clean shots on retreating Iraqis, but they were running away, no longer threats, just men trying to get home. I let them go. Command was furious, but those men were sons, fathers, brothers. Knowing them would have been murder, not combat. If you become a warrior, and I suspect you will, knowing your mother's fire and my stubbornness, remember this. The hardest shot is the one you don't take. That's what separates soldiers from executioners. I love you. I'm sorry I won't be there to teach you this myself. Dad. Kate's hands were shaking as she folded the letter. Tears she'd held back for 7 years finally broke through. He knew, she whispered. He knew exactly what I'd face in Afghanistan. The same choice, the same test. Hastings stood, giving Kate privacy with her grief. He was preparing you, even from beyond the grave. Kate tucked the letter into her tactical vest, over her heart. Then I'll honor what he taught. These 12 kills in Syria, they're necessary, active threats, but I'll know when to stop. When the mission is complete and the killing becomes something else. She looked at Hastings with renewed determination. That's the difference between me and the snipers I'm hunting. They kill because they're paid. I kill because Americans need to come home. Before Hastings could respond, Captain Blackwood approached, satellite phone still in hand. We have a problem, he said. Of course they did. There was always a problem. Syria's situation has deteriorated faster than expected. Team 9 is now at 12% ammunition. They've taken additional casualties. 4 KIA, 9 wounded. They're down to 34 effectives. He showed them updated satellite imagery on his tablet. Wagner Group has also reinforced, now estimating 160 fighters. And the 12 snipers aren't just good, they're exceptional. Former Spetsnaz, ex-British SAS, couple of Americans who went private after dishonorable discharges. This isn't target practice. These are professionals who know exactly what they're doing. Kate studied the imagery with the clinical detachment of experience. The compound where Team 9 was trapped. The 12 sniper positions marked in red, each carefully chosen for overlapping fields of fire and mutual support. The approach routes all covered, the fallback positions all zeroed in. Primary landing zone puts me here, she said, pointing to a position 3 kilometers northwest. Terrain provides concealment for movement to this ridge. Good elevation, clear sight lines to, she counted quickly, 7 of the 12 positions. The other 5 require you to relocate, Blackwood confirmed, which means crossing 900 meters of open ground while hostile snipers are actively hunting you. Kate zoomed in on the satellite imagery, studying terrain features and building layouts with intensity that made the tablet screen seem like a window into the actual battlefield. No, she said slowly, I can take all 12 from the primary position. Blackwood looked skeptical. Petty Officer Reeves, I've reviewed the angles. 5 of those positions have no direct line of sight from your primary hide. You'd be shooting through buildings, through solid walls. Not through, Kate corrected. Around. Buildings have windows. Windows create channels. If I can calculate the deflection angles, account for glass interference and trajectory decay, I can thread shots through multiple windows. Use the building's architecture instead of fighting against it. She traced a path on the screen with her finger. This target here, 3rd building, reinforced position, looks impossible from primary hide because of the 2 structures between us. But look, window on the northeast corner of building 1. If I put a round through that window at the correct angle, it travels down the hallway, exits through this window on the southwest side, crosses the alley, enters building 2 through this window, travels through what looks like an office space, exits here. Now I'm in the same building as the target, just need the bullet to go through 1 more window, and I have a direct line to his position. Blackwood stared at the screen, then at Kate, then back at the screen. That's 4 windows, 4 separate glass panes, each one deflecting the bullet path. 4 different rooms with different temperatures affecting trajectory. At a range of over 2,000 meters, 2,389 meters to the first window, Kate said. But who's counting? That's impossible. So was holding a ridge line for 22 hours against 280 fighters, Kate replied. Impossible is just another word for difficult, and difficult is what I do. Hastings had been quiet during this exchange, but now she spoke. Kate, I need to know you're ready for this. Really ready. Not the bravado, not the technical confidence. I need to know that you can pull the trigger 12 times, kill 12 people, and live with yourself afterward. Kate met her former commander's eyes. I'll live with it the same way I've lived with the previous 247, by understanding it was necessary, by knowing that every shot I don't take costs American lives, by accepting that I'm a weapon, and weapons don't get the luxury of choosing their targets. They just need to be sharp enough to hit them. She stood, moving to the weapons case to retrieve additional equipment. Her movements were precise, economical, the product of years doing these same actions in cramped quarters in combat conditions. But there's something you need to understand, Kate continued, checking the Schmidt and Bender scope and its custom reticle she designed specifically for extreme long-range work. I'm not the same person who got court-martialed. That Kate thought she could draw lines, thought she could decide which kills were justified and which weren't, thought morality was simple. She mounted the scope with practiced efficiency, the clicks of the adjustment turrets sharp in the cargo bay. The last 7 years taught me that nothing is simple. I saved 38 men and lost Caleb. I refused to kill 70 fleeing Taliban and probably created 70 future threats. Every choice has consequences. Every shot taken and every shot refused creates ripples I can't predict. Kate looked at the rifle in her hands, Caleb's promise, though she wouldn't say the name. So when I take these 12 shots, I won't be thinking about whether it's moral. I'll be thinking about 34 SEALs who want to go home, about the families waiting for them, about the fact that I have the skill to save them and the responsibility to use it. She paused, then added quietly, and I'll be thinking about Caleb, about how he died doing his job so others could live, about how I owe it to him to be that same kind of weapon when it matters. Hastings nodded slowly. Your father would be proud. Kate's expression flickered with something that might have been pain. I never knew my father. He died in Kuwait 2 months before I was born. All I have are stories. Garrison stories. The after-action reports I shouldn't have been able to access. The legend of Wraith 1 and the Highway of Death. She picked up something from her gear bag. A set of military dog tags, old and worn, the metal scratched from decades of friction. Garrison gave me these. My father's tags. Kept them since 1991. Said my dad would want me to have them. Kate held the tags up to the cargo bay light, reading the stamped information that defined a man she'd never met. Marcus Reeves, Chief Petty Officer, blood type O positive, Navy SEAL, Wraith 1. She put the tags around her neck, tucking them under her shirt where they rested against the scar from her own bullet wound. I finally understand what he was trying to teach me, Kate said softly. What he died before he could tell me himself. The hardest shot is the one you don't take. The C-130's engines changed pitch, the aircraft beginning its descent toward the classified airbase in Eastern Europe that would serve as final staging for the Syria insertion. Blackwood checked his watch. 4 hours until insertion. We land in 20 minutes. You'll have time for final equipment checks, brief with the insertion team, and grab 2 hours sleep if you can. Kate almost laughed at that. Sleep. As if sleep was possible when you were hours away from killing 12 people you'd never met to save 34 you'd never met. As if adrenaline and mission focus would allow anything resembling rest. But she nodded anyway, because that's what operators did. You acknowledged the plan even when you knew the plan was optimistic fiction. The aircraft touched down with the controlled violence of military aviation. Tires screaming against runway, thrust reversers howling. Kate gathered her equipment with the efficiency of someone who'd done this countless times. Rifle secured in its case, ammunition packed in proper containers, scope protected, rangefinder and wind meter checked and double-checked. By the time the cargo ramp lowered, she was ready. The airbase was exactly what she'd expected. Temporary structures, minimal lighting, heavily armed security, and the general atmosphere of a place that didn't officially exist. Personnel moved with purpose, and nobody made eye contact unless necessary. This was the infrastructure of black operations, the skeleton that supported missions governments would never acknowledge. A young lieutenant, couldn't have been more than 25, approached with a tablet and nervous energy. Petty Officer Reeves, I'm Lieutenant Marcus Webb, Mission Coordinator. We've got your briefing room set up and... He stopped abruptly as Kate's expression went cold. What did you say your name was? Lieutenant Marcus Webb, ma'am. I'll be coordinating your insertion in... Your first name, Kate interrupted. It's Marcus? Yes, ma'am. Kate closed her eyes briefly. The universe had a cruel sense of humor. Not just Marcus, but Marcus Webb, combining her dead spotter's first name with the nervous young Marine from the bar, as if she needed the reminder of what she'd lost and what she was about to risk. Are you all right, ma'am? Lieutenant Webb asked, concerned. Fine, Kate said shortly. Show me the briefing room. The briefing room was standard military sparse. Table, chairs, communications equipment, walls covered with maps and satellite imagery. But one wall held something that made Kate stop in her tracks. Photographs. 47 photographs arranged in neat rows. Team 9, current operational roster, with 4 faces marked with black bands across their corners. The 4 who'd already died, waiting for rescue. Kate moved closer, studying the faces. Young men, most of them. A few women, all of them warriors who'd volunteered for the most dangerous assignments and now found themselves paying the price for someone else's bad intelligence. Command thought you'd want to see who you're saving, Lieutenant Webb said quietly. These are the 34 still alive. These 4, He gestured to the marked photos. We lost them in the last 12 hours. Kate's eyes moved across the faces. Staff Sergeant Michael Torres, 29, married, 2 kids according to the bio beneath his photo. Petty Officer First Class Sarah Mitchell, 31, enlisted after 9/11. This was her 6th deployment. Lieutenant James Hawthorne, 26, Naval Academy graduate, family military tradition going back 4 generations. And there, Chief Petty Officer Robert Kane, 34, combat medic, credited with saving 17 lives during previous deployments. Kate stared at Kane's photo. Combat medic, like Caleb had been when he wasn't spotting for her. Another medic who might die because the bullets found him before rescue did. Tell me about the snipers, she said, turning away from the photos before the weight of all those faces became too much. Lieutenant Webb pulled up a different screen, showing 12 profiles. Wagner Group doesn't mess around. These aren't enthusiastic amateurs. Former Russian Spetsnaz, ex-British SAS, couple of Americans who went private after disciplinary issues. Each one has confirmed kills in double digits. Each one knows what they're doing. He highlighted the first profile. Primary threat is this one. Dmitry Volkov, ex-Spetsnaz, 23 years experience, estimated 60+ confirmed kills. He's commanding the sniper element. Smart, patient, doesn't take unnecessary risks. Next profile. James Richardson, former British SAS, dishonorable discharge after unauthorized killing of civilians in Iraq. 70 confirmed kills. Known for extreme range shots, his record is 2,400 meters. Kate's record was 2,847 meters. She didn't mention this. Lieutenant Webb continued through the roster. 12 professional killers, each one a genuine threat, each one positioned to make Team 9's rescue impossible without extraordinary intervention. Your primary hide gives you line of sight to these 7, Webb said, highlighting positions on the map. The other 5 are protected by buildings, terrain features, or both. Current doctrine says you'd need to relocate to engage them, which would expose you to counter-sniper fire from whoever you haven't eliminated yet. Current doctrine doesn't account for deflection shooting, Kate said. Ma'am? Kate pulled up the satellite imagery, enhancing the resolution to maximum. These 5 impossible positions all have one thing in common. They're inside buildings with windows. Windows are holes in walls. Holes can be exploited. She traced paths with her finger, showing theoretical bullet trajectories that threaded through multiple structures. Target 8, I put a round through this window. It travels down the hallway, exits here, crosses to building 2, enters through this window, and I've got a line to his position. Target 9, 3-window deflection shot, accounts for glass interference at each pane. Target 10, she paused, studying a particularly challenging position. Target 10 is in a basement room, 0 line of sight from any angle. But there's a ventilation shaft, metal ductwork. If I can put a round into the intake at the correct angle, the bullet ricochets off the duct walls, twice, maybe 3 times, and drops into his position. Lieutenant Webb looked at her like she'd suggested shooting the moon. Ma'am, with all due respect, that's not just difficult, that's impossible, Kate finished. I know. Physics says it can't be done. Ballistics calculators say I'm insane. Common sense says to relocate and take the standard approach. She met his eyes. But common sense doesn't save 34 lives when 12 professional snipers have them zeroed in. Common sense doesn't thread a bullet through 4 windows and make the shot anyway. Common sense is what gets people killed when the situation requires exceptional. She turned back to the satellite imagery. I'm not common sense. I'm Wraith 7, and impossible is what I do. Lieutenant Webb swallowed hard, then nodded. Yes, ma'am. Your insertion is scheduled for 0300 local time. Halo jump from 28,000 feet, 3 kilometers northwest of your primary position. You'll have approximately 2 hours to move into position before sunrise. Team 9 has been informed that counter-sniper support is inbound. We didn't tell them who, operational security, but they know someone's coming. He hesitated, then added, "They're holding on because of that promise, ma'am. They think if they can just survive another few hours, help will arrive. If you don't make it, if something goes wrong, then 34 more families get folded flags and empty condolences," Kate finished. "I know. That's why I won't fail." She said it with such absolute certainty that Lieutenant Webb actually believed her. The next 2 hours passed in the mechanical routine of preparation. Equipment checks performed 3 times because 3 was the minimum for mission-critical gear. Ammunition selected from match-grade lots. Each round examined for imperfections that might affect flight characteristics at extreme range. Rifle cleaned, lubricated, function tested. Scope adjustments verified, reticle alignment confirmed. Kate moved through these tasks with the automatic precision of muscle memory, her hands performing actions while her mind ranged ahead to the mission. Wind conditions in Syria, temperature gradients between sunlit and shaded areas, humidity effects on bullet trajectory, the Coriolis effect at various ranges. Every variable cataloged, every calculation prepared. Hastings found her an hour before insertion, sitting in the ready room with her rifle disassembled for the 4th time, checking each component like the secrets of the universe were hidden in the bolt carrier group. "You should rest," Hastings said. "Can't," Kate replied without looking up. "Too much adrenaline, too much mission focus. Sleep would be wasted anyway." Hastings sat down across from her, watching the younger woman's hands move with practiced efficiency. "I testified at your court-martial because you were right," Hastings said quietly. "But I need you to understand something. What you're about to do, these 12 kills, they're justified, necessary, moral. These aren't fleeing soldiers. These are active combatants engaged in ongoing hostile action against U.S. forces." Kate's hands paused. "I know. Do you? Because I need you sharp out there, not second-guessing every shot. I need Wraith 7, not Kate Reeves having a moral crisis at 2,000 meters." Kate set down the rifle component she'd been examining. "When I refused that order in Afghanistan, it wasn't because I suddenly developed a conscience. It wasn't some moral awakening. It was because Caleb died for a reason, to save 38 men. And turning around and killing 70 more people who were no longer threats would have made his death meaningless." She looked at Hastings directly. "These 12 snipers in Syria, they're actively killing Americans, right now, this moment. Every minute I waste is another minute they're putting rounds into Team 9. This isn't execution, this is combat. This is exactly what I'm supposed to do." "Good," Hastings said, "because those 34 men don't need your philosophy. They need your bullets. They need Wraith 7 to be the weapon she was trained to be." Kate reassembled the rifle in under 30 seconds, movements smooth and automatic. "I'll be the weapon," she said, "but afterward, I get to be human again. That's the deal. I do this, I save them, and then I go back to being Kate Reeves who pours drinks and pretends the nightmares aren't real." "Deal," Hastings agreed, knowing it was a lie they both needed to believe. The Halo jump equipment went on layer by layer. Thermal undergarment, flight suit, parachute harness, oxygen system, rifle secured in a drag bag designed for high-altitude operations. Every piece of gear checked by both Kate and the jumpmaster, because equipment failure at 28,000 feet wasn't survivable. The aircraft that would take her to Syria was already running, a modified C-130 equipped for covert insertion operations. No markings, no identification. If it went down, there would be no official record it had ever been there. Kate walked to the aircraft with her gear, each step feeling heavier than the last. Not from the physical weight, she'd carried heavier loads over longer distances. This was the emotional weight of knowing that in a few hours, 12 people would be dead by her hand. 247 would become 259. She climbed into the aircraft, secured her gear, ran through pre-jump checks one final time. The other personnel on board gave her space, recognizing something in her demeanor that suggested conversation would be unwelcome. But before she could settle in, Garrison's voice crackled through her encrypted phone. She'd given him the number for emergencies only. "Kate, wait," she answered. "Garrison, I'm about to wheels up. This better be—" "I'm not coming with you," he said, and she could hear the strain in his voice. "And I need to say this before you go." Kate moved to a quieter corner of the cargo bay. "What is it?" "I pulled that M40A5 earlier, was ready to fight my way onto that bird with you. Thought your father would want me watching your back." "We already talked about this." "Let me finish," Garrison interrupted. "Your father gave me something else in Kuwait, not just those dog tags. He made me promise something." Kate's grip tightened on the phone. "2 days before he died, Marcus looked at me and said, 'If I don't make it home, if my daughter becomes a warrior like me, don't let her make my mistakes. Don't let her think being Wraith means always saying yes to the mission. Teach her that walking away takes more courage than pulling the trigger.'" Kate's throat tightened. "He knew he was going to die?" she whispered. "No, but he knew the odds. And he wanted you to have a choice he never felt he had. So I'm giving you that choice now, Kate. You can walk away. Let someone else take this mission. Let Wraith 7 stay retired." Kate looked at the mission photos still displayed on her phone. 34 faces. 34 warriors who'd asked for her by name. "I can't," she said. "They need me." "That's what your father always said," Garrison replied. "Right up until Kuwait killed him. So I'm telling you what I should have told him. You don't owe the world your death. You don't owe anyone Wraith 7. You're allowed to choose life." Kate felt tears threatening. "But if I don't go, then someone else will. Maybe they won't be as good. Maybe more people die. Or maybe they'll figure it out and everyone lives anyway. You can't control every outcome, Kate. You can only control whether you sacrifice yourself again." She looked at the aircraft around her, the weapons, the gear, the machinery of war that had defined her entire adult life. "I have to go," she said finally, "but not because I owe them, because I choose to. There's a difference." Garrison was quiet for a long moment. "Then I'll be here when you get back," he said, "coordinating extraction, maintaining your escape route, being the backup plan you don't need, but that's there anyway." "If I don't come back, you'll come back," Garrison said firmly. "You're Marcus Reeves' daughter. Wraith blood runs in your veins, and Wraiths don't die easy." Kate managed a small smile through her tears. "Take care of the bar. And Garrison, thank you for everything. Thank you for letting an old man pretend he was useful one more time." The call ended. Kate tucked the phone away, feeling lighter somehow. Garrison had given her permission to choose, and she'd chosen the mission. Not out of obligation, out of purpose. As the aircraft climbed toward altitude, Kate pulled out the dog tags from under her flight suit. Her father's tags, Marcus Reeves, Wraith 1. The man who'd saved 40 Marines on the highway of death and died before meeting his daughter. She held them, feeling the worn metal, reading the faded stamping by the red light of the cargo bay. "I don't know if you'd be proud of what I became," she whispered to the memory of a man she'd never known. "Don't know if saving people by killing other people is what you wanted from me. But it's what I'm good at. It's what I have to offer." She tucked the tags back under her suit, feeling them rest against her chest like a talisman. The loadmaster's voice came through her headset. 30 minutes to drop zone." Kate closed her eyes, centering herself, finding that mental space where fear and doubt couldn't reach, where there was only mission and target and the mathematics of death dealt at extreme range. Wraith 7 was waking up, and when Wraith 7 woke up, people died. The question was whether the right people would die or whether Kate's return to combat would create more problems than it solved. In Syria, 34 SEALs held their positions and waited for a ghost to save them. In the aircraft, that ghost checked her rifle one more time and prepared to become death incarnate. The jump light turned red. 60 seconds to drop. Kate stood, moving to the ramp, feeling the Syrian night rushing past at 300 miles per hour. The light turned green. She jumped into darkness, falling toward a war that had been waiting 7 years for her return. The free fall through Syrian night was silence in velocity, Kate's body cutting through air at terminal velocity, while the ground rushed up to meet her with mathematical inevitability. 28,000 feet became 20,000, became 15, the altimeter on her wrist tracking descent with digital precision. At exactly 8,000 feet, the automatic activation device triggered her parachute, the deployment shock violent enough to snap her teeth together despite the mouthguard. Then came the quiet. The canopy overhead, dark fabric against darker sky, slowing her descent to something survivable. Below, the Syrian desert stretched out in shades of black and gray, illuminated only by starlight and the distant glow of cities she would never visit. 3 kilometers to the northwest, Team 9 was dying by inches, their ammunition dwindling with each passing minute. Kate guided her parachute toward the designated landing zone, a dried riverbed that satellite imagery suggested would provide both concealment and firm ground for movement. The landing was textbook perfect. Feet together, knees bent, rolled to distribute impact. She was on her feet in seconds, already collapsing the chute, already moving because movement was life and stillness was death. The parachute went into a shallow hole she scraped with her boots and covered with sand and rocks. It wouldn't survive close inspection, but it didn't need to. By the time anyone found it, she'd either be extracted or dead, and either way the parachute wouldn't matter. 3 kilometers, rough terrain, hostile territory, 2 hours until sunrise. Kate started moving. The Syrian desert at 0300 was a study in contrasts, freezing cold that seeped through tactical gear despite thermal layers, but also strangely beautiful in its desolation. Kate moved through it like a ghost, each step placed with deliberate care, avoiding loose rocks that might shift and create noise, staying low to avoid skylining against the star-filled horizon. Her rifle was slung across her back, drag bag traded for a more practical carry configuration now that she was on the ground. The weight was familiar, comfortable even. This rifle had been with her through 4 deployments, had never failed when she needed it, had delivered death with precision across impossible distances. It was the most honest relationship she'd ever had. Feed it good ammunition, maintain it properly, and it would never let her down. Unlike people. People let you down. People died in your arms while trying to call wind corrections through a collapsed lung. Kate pushed the memory of Caleb away. No time for ghosts now. She had living men to save and professional killers to eliminate. The dead could wait their turn. 90 minutes of careful movement brought her to the ridgeline that would serve as her primary firing position. The location was exactly what the satellite imagery had promised. Good elevation, clear sight lines to the compound where Team 9 was trapped, natural defilade that would conceal her from observation. She began preparing her hide, using a small entrenching tool to create a shallow depression that would let her shoot while remaining below the ridgeline's crest. The work was familiar, meditative almost. Scrape sand, test the angle, scrape more. Every movement economical, efficient, the product of training that had become instinct. By the time the first hint of dawn began lightening the eastern sky, Kate had created a firing position that would be invisible from more than 50 meters away. She set up her rifle with the same careful precision, checking every system one final time. Scope mounted and zeroed. Bipod adjusted for the exact angle she needed. Ammunition laid out in easy reach. Match grade. 338 Lapua Magnum. Each round hand-selected for consistency. Wind meter positioned to give her real-time data. Rangefinder ready to confirm distances. And finally, she pulled out her father's dog tags, laying them next to her rifle where she could see them. Marcus Reeves, Wraith 1. A reminder of legacy and responsibility and the weight of family tradition that demanded excellence. Dawn broke across the Syrian desert like a promise of violence. The compound where Team 9 was trapped became visible in the growing light, a cluster of buildings that had probably once housed a school or community center, now transformed into a fortress of desperation. Kate could see movement inside, shapes that were men conserving ammunition and hoping rescue would arrive before the inevitable assault. Around the compound, Wagner Group fighters were preparing for that assault. And in 12 carefully chosen positions, professional snipers watched and waited, ready to kill anyone who tried to escape. Kate's encrypted radio crackled softly. Wraith 7, this is command. Team 9 is at 10% ammunition. Multiple casualties. Enemy preparing for final assault. You are cleared hot on all 12 targets. Kate keyed her mic once. Acknowledgement without words. Then she settled into her rifle, feeling the familiar pressure of the stock against her shoulder, her cheek finding the perfect weld position on the buttstock that she'd practiced 10,000 times. Through her scope, the world became magnified clarity. She could see the first target, a sniper positioned in what remained of a minaret, 1,788 meters away, according to her rangefinder. The man was good, she'd give him that. Proper concealment, minimal profile exposure, only the objective lens of his scope visible if you knew where to look. Kate knew where to look. She ran her calculations. Range, 1,788. Wind, 3 miles per hour from the northwest. Temperature, 14 degrees Celsius and rising. Humidity, 22%. Barometric pressure, standard for this elevation. Coriolis effect at this range and latitude, 0.4 milliradians. Her fingers made microscopic adjustments to the scope's turrets. Click, click. Each adjustment moving the reticle by exactly 1/4 minute of angle, which at this range translated to roughly 4.5 inches. She controlled her breathing. In, out, in, out. Finding the natural pause between breaths where the body was most stable. Her finger found the trigger, taking up the slack with steady pressure. For Caleb, she thought, and fired. The rifle's report cracked across the desert, the sound echoing off rocks and buildings. The recoil drove back into her shoulder with familiar force. Through the scope, Kate watched the bullet's flight. Not visually, that was impossible, but through the effects it created. A tiny disturbance in the air, a minute shift in the heat shimmer. 1,788 meters away, the Wagner sniper's scope exploded as the bullet found its mark. The man dropped, dead before his brain could process what had happened. Kate was already moving, chambering another round, finding her next target. No time to dwell on the kill. No time to think about the fact that man had probably had a family, a life. Reasons for being there beyond just money. He'd been trying to kill Americans. That made him a valid target. That was the only calculation that mattered. Target 2 was at 2134 meters, a moving target repositioning after hearing the first shot. Longer range, more difficult conditions as the sun rose and created thermal variations in the air. Kate adjusted for the increased range, for the wind that was picking up as the desert began to heat, for the target's movement pattern. She led the shot, putting her crosshairs where the man would be in the 4.3 seconds it would take the bullet to arrive. For Dad, she thought, and fired. The target dropped mid-step, the bullet taking him through the chest. 2 down, 10 to go. Target 3 was trying to locate her, his scope scanning the ridgeline where her muzzle flash had come from. 1956 meters, partially concealed behind a wall that left only a narrow gap visible. Kate would have to thread the bullet through that gap, accounting for the fact that the wall would create wind eddies that might deflect the shot. She calculated the deflection, adjusted for it, found that perfect moment between heartbeats. For the 40 you saved in Kuwait, she thought, and fired. The bullet passed through the gap with inches to spare, finding the enemy sniper behind his inadequate cover. 3 down. Target 4 was 2287 meters away, the longest shot so far, and he was repositioning rapidly, understanding that staying still meant death. Kate tracked his movement, her mind processing speed and direction, and calculating where she needed to aim to intercept. For the 38 I saved in Afghanistan, she thought, and fired. The target fell, tumbling from his position in a water tower. 4 down. The remaining Wagner snipers now understood what was happening. They were being hunted by someone exceptional. Someone who could make shots they could barely comprehend. Kate could see them through her scope, panic replacing confidence as they tried to find cover that would protect them from an enemy they couldn't see. But panic made people predictable, and predictable made them dead. Target 5 was at 2012 meters, taking defensive position behind sandbags. He was calling on his radio, probably trying to coordinate with the others, trying to develop a plan. Kate adjusted for range in the crosswind that was building as the sun climbed higher. The counter-sniper fire began just as she squeezed the trigger. Bullets impacted the sand 3 meters to her left, kicking up small geysers of dirt. Someone had spotted her muzzle flash, had made an educated guess about her position. Her bullet found target 5 anyway. 5 down, 7 to go. The incoming fire intensified. Whoever was shooting at her was good, adjusting based on her muzzle flash, walking rounds closer to her position. Kate shifted slightly, moving just enough to throw off the shooter's calculations without compromising her own sight picture. Target 6 was at 2445 meters, trying to flank around to a position where he could shoot at the ridgeline. Long range, difficult angle, and Kate's shoulder was already beginning to ache from sustained recoil. The rifle fired. 6 down. Then the mortar fire started. Someone had called in indirect fire support, trying to suppress her position with high explosive rounds that didn't need precision, just proximity. The first round impacted 30 meters away, the explosion loud enough to make her ears ring despite her hearing protection. Kate didn't move. Moving meant losing her position, losing her sight lines, losing the advantage that was keeping Team 9 alive. Target 7 was the Wagner commander. She could tell by the way the others deferred to him on the radio frequencies she was monitoring. 1834 meters, directing his forces with professional competence, trying to organize a response to the ghost that was systematically eliminating his sniper element. Kate centered her crosshairs on him. This shot mattered more than the others. Kill the commander, create chaos in the enemy ranks. Another mortar round impacted, closer this time, 20 meters, close enough that shrapnel whistled overhead. She sent the round downrange. The Wagner commander dropped. 7 down, 5 to go. And then her shoulder gave out. The sustained recoil, the old injury from Afghanistan that had never fully healed, the stress of precision shooting under fire, it all came together in a moment of white-hot agony as her shoulder dislocated. The joint simply popped out of its socket, the humeral head sliding forward in a way that anatomy textbooks said was possible, but pain receptors said was intolerable. Kate gasped, nearly dropping the rifle. Her right arm was suddenly useless, hanging at an unnatural angle, nerve pain radiating down to her fingertips. Through the pain she heard Caleb's voice, a memory from Afghanistan, from hour 9 when this same injury had happened before. Left hand, Kate, you can do this. A mortar round impacted 15 meters away. Shrapnel pinged off the rocks around her. The Wagner snipers were zeroing in, probably had thermal imaging tracking her heat signature by now. Kate reached across with her left hand, grabbed her right wrist, and slammed her shoulder against a large rock with deliberate, controlled violence. The agony was transcendent, beyond anything that should be survivable while maintaining consciousness. But the joint relocated with a grinding pop that she felt more than heard. Her right arm would be mostly useless now, the muscles traumatized, the joint unstable. Fine motor control necessary for precision shooting was impossible. So she switched to her left hand. The rifle had to be reconfigured, stock adjusted, shooting position changed. Her brain had to rewire itself to process the sight picture from the opposite eye. And she had to do it all while mortar fire walked closer and enemy snipers tried to kill her. Kate made the adjustments with shaking hands, setting up for left-handed shooting while her right shoulder screamed protest. This was insanity. This was impossible. This was what Wraith 7 did. Target 8 was visible through 4 windows, the impossible shot that Lieutenant Webb had said couldn't be made. Kate could see the path now, through the first building's northeast window, down the hallway visible through the glass, out the southwest window, across the alley, into Building 2, through the office space, and finally into the target's position. 2389 meters, 4 glass panes, 4 separate deflection angles, temperature differentials between sunlit and shaded spaces, wind variations at each window opening. She had to calculate it all left-handed, in pain, under fire. Kate spent 6 minutes on the math, her left hand making adjustments to the scope while her right arm hung useless. Mortar rounds continued to impact, getting closer. 50 meters, 40, 30. She fired left-handed, the unfamiliar recoil pattern strange against her shoulder. The bullet traveled for 4.2 seconds. Through window 1, down the hallway, deflecting 2 degrees left from the glass. Out window 2, across the alley, wind pushing at 0.3 milliradians right. Through window 3, temperature differential creating updraft, bullet rises 4 inches. Into the target room through window 4. Through her scope, Kate saw the target fall. 8 down, 4 to go. Her radio crackled. Wraith 7, multiple hostiles moving on your position. You need to relocate. She keyed the mic with her left hand. Negative, 4 targets remaining. Relocating loses sightlines. I finished the mission. You're going to get killed. Probably, Kate thought. But 34 SEALs get to live. That's the trade. Target 9 required a 3-window deflection shot, each window at a different angle, each requiring precise calculation. Kate's left hand was cramping from the unfamiliar stress of operating the rifle. Her right shoulder was swelling, the joint definitely unstable. Another clean hit. 9 down. Target 10 was the one in the basement, accessible only through the ventilation shaft. The shot that required the bullet to ricochet twice off metal ductwork, maintaining enough velocity after each impact to continue on the calculated path. Kate studied the angle. The shaft intake was visible on the roof, a square opening about 8 inches across. If she put the bullet into that opening at exactly 34 degrees, physics said it would ricochet off the duct's interior wall, deflect, ricochet again, and drop into the basement room where the target was positioned. Physics also said this was impossible. Bullets deformed when they hit metal. Deformation changed flight characteristics. The calculations were theoretical at best. Kate spent 9 minutes on the math, factoring in bullet construction, likely deformation patterns, energy retention after impact. The Wagner forces were getting closer. She could hear small arms fire now, disciplined 3-round bursts from professional soldiers who knew how to advance under fire. She fired left-handed at the ventilation shaft opening, 2691 meters away. The bullet entered the shaft, ricocheted, ricocheted again, and somewhere in the basement below, target 10 stopped moving. 10 down, 2 to go. The final 2 Wagner snipers had learned from their dead comrades. They weren't exposing themselves, weren't giving Kate clean shots. They'd gone to ground, understanding that patience might let them survive what aggression could not. But Kate didn't have time for patience. Team 9 was reporting enemy assault beginning. Wagner ground forces were moving on the compound while the remaining snipers provided overwatch. If Kate didn't eliminate those last 2 snipers, the SEALs would be pinned down during extraction. Target 11 was fleeing. She could see him through the scope, running from his position toward a vehicle, understanding that staying meant death. He was 67 meters away and moving fast, unarmed as far as she could tell, no longer a threat. Kate's finger tightened on the trigger, then paused. Afghanistan, 70 Taliban fighters running away, the order to engage, her refusal, the court-martial that followed. This man was retreating, no weapon visible, no longer engaged in hostile action. The memory of her father's letter. The hardest shot is the one you don't take. That's what separates soldiers from executioners. Kate held her fire. The man reached the vehicle, pulled open the door, and from inside the vehicle he grabbed an RPG launcher, turning back toward the compound where Team 9 was trapped. Now he was a threat. Kate fired left-handed, the bullet crossing 2067 meters in 3.8 seconds, punching through the vehicle's windshield and finding the target before he could aim the RPG. "Only when necessary, Dad," she whispered. 11 down, 1 to go. The final sniper was Dmitry Volkov, the ex-Spetsnaz commander, the professional who'd survived this long by being better than everyone else. He was in a hardened position with reinforced concrete on 3 sides, only an 8-centimeter gap between wall and roof visible on Kate's thermal imaging. 2847 meters. If she made this shot, it would break her own record from 2014. It would also be left-handed, with a dislocated shoulder, under mortar fire, through a gap barely wider than the bullet itself. Kate set up the shot with obsessive precision. Range 2847. Wind 4 miles per hour, variable gusts. Temperature 21 Celsius, humidity 18%. And the Coriolis effect at this extreme range was significant enough to matter. She dialed in her corrections. Click, click, click. Each adjustment moving her point of impact by inches at nearly 3 kilometers. Mortar fire had stopped. Either they'd run out of ammunition or they were preparing for final assault. Either way, Kate had minutes at most. She put her father's dog tags around her neck, feeling the worn metal against her skin. Legacy and responsibility and the weight of being Wraith. "This one's for you, Wraith 1, she thought. She controlled her breathing despite the pain, found that perfect moment between heartbeats, felt the trigger break with her left hand, unfamiliar but functional. The rifle fired. The bullet began its 5.1-second journey across almost 3 kilometers of Syrian air. Kate tracked it mentally. Initial trajectory, wind pushing it slightly right, Coriolis effect creating lateral drift, gravity pulling it down in a parabolic arc. The bullet spinning at 200,000 revolutions per minute to maintain stability. 2847 meters away, the bullet entered the 8-centimeter gap with millimeters to spare. Found Dmitry Volkov behind his reinforced concrete, ended the threat. Kate's radio erupted with voices. "All hostile snipers down. All targets eliminated. Wraith 7, you're clear for extraction." She didn't respond immediately. Couldn't. The weight of what she'd just done was crashing down with delayed force. 12 men dead by her hand in less than 90 minutes. 12 professionals who'd woken up this morning thinking they were predators, not understanding they were prey. 247 had become 259. Below, Team 9 was breaking out of the compound under helicopter cover. The helicopters that couldn't come before because sniper fire would have knocked them from the sky. The helicopters that could come now because Wraith 7 had cleared the overwatch positions. Kate watched 34 warriors sprint for the helicopters, firing as they moved, covering each other with professional precision. They made it, all 34, not a single additional casualty during extraction. Her own extraction helicopter arrived 40 minutes later, coming in fast and low, door gunners blazing away at Wagner forces who were trying to reorganize after losing their sniper element and their commander. Kate ran for the helicopter left-handed, her rifle clutched awkwardly, her right arm useless. Bullets cracked past her head, mortar rounds impacted behind her, and then hands were pulling her aboard, the helicopter lifting immediately, banking hard to avoid an RPG that sailed past the rotor disc. "We're clear," the pilot announced. All personnel extracted. Mission complete. Mission complete. Words that should have brought relief, but instead just brought exhaustion. Kate slumped in the troop seat, her rifle across her lap, her shoulder a symphony of agony. Across from her, a Navy corpsman was already moving to treat her shoulder. Young kid, couldn't have been more than 22, but his hands were steady as he examined the joint. "This is going to hurt," he said apologetically. Kate almost laughed. It already hurt beyond description. More pain was just more of the same. The corpsman injected something into her shoulder, probably morphine or a similar analgesic, and began the process of properly stabilizing the joint. Kate let him work, staring out the helicopter's open door at the Syrian desert receding below. 12 shots, 12 kills, 34 lives saved. The mathematics of violence at extreme range. The helicopter flew to an undisclosed base where Team 9 was being treated and debriefed. As Kate disembarked, her right arm immobilized in a sling, she found 34 warriors waiting in formation. Living warriors who owed their lives to a ghost they'd never met. As one, they saluted. Formal, respectful, the kind of salute that acknowledged debt beyond words. The team leader, a lieutenant commander whose name Kate would never know for operational security reasons, stepped forward. "Wraith 7, he said simply, "you saved every one of us. We owe you everything." Kate returned the salute left-handed, the gesture awkward but sincere. "You owe me nothing. This is what we do. My father saved 40 men in Kuwait. I saved 34 in Syria. The legacy continues." Commander Hastings was there, tablet in hand, already reviewing after-action reports. She approached Kate with something that might have been pride in her expression. 12 shots, 12 kills, including 5 that command said were impossible, and you did it left-handed with a dislocated shoulder. "The shoulder dislocated after shot 7, Kate corrected. "The first 7 were normal, impossible. The last 5 were extra impossible." Hastings smiled slightly. "Your father would be proud. Caleb would be proud. I'm proud." Kate nodded, accepting the words because refusing them would be ungracious. But inside, she felt hollow. Proud of what? Killing 12 people? Being really, really good at sending bullets into human bodies from distances that made it impersonal? The morphine was making her philosophical. Never a good sign. The flight back to California took 19 hours with refueling stops at bases that didn't officially exist. Kate slept through most of it, the sleep of complete exhaustion mixed with pharmaceutical assistance. When she dreamed, she saw faces. Not the 12 from Syria, those would come later, once she had names and backgrounds. No, she saw Caleb's face, the way he'd looked in hour 4 when the light had gone out of his eyes mid-sentence. She woke to find they were descending toward the same airbase in California where this had all started. 2 days ago. Felt like 2 years. Garrison was waiting on the tarmac with the same unmarked SUV. 71 years old and still standing straight, still carrying himself like the warrior he'd been before age and injuries had claimed their due. Kate walked down the aircraft ramp left-handed, her rifle case in her good hand, moving like someone who'd aged a decade in 2 days. Garrison took one look at her and pulled her into a careful hug, mindful of her injured shoulder. "You came back," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Promised I would," Kate replied. 34 saved, 20 down. The legacy continues. Kate pulled back, looking at the old man who'd given her sanctuary for 7 years. "It's not the legacy I wanted. Being good at killing isn't something to celebrate." "No," Garrison agreed, "but being good at saving is. Those 34 men are going home to families tonight because of you. That's what matters." They drove back to the tavern in silence, Kate watching the familiar California landscape pass by and trying to reconcile this peaceful, civilian world with the violence she just committed in Syria. When they pulled up to Garrison's tavern, 5 Marines were waiting outside, standing at attention despite civilian clothes. Brennan Caldwell, Jameson Thatcher, Reese Donovan, Elliot Vaughn, and Sloan Merrick. Kate got out of the SUV slowly, her body protesting the movement. The 5 Marines saluted in unison. "We were wrong," Brennan said, his voice carrying genuine remorse. "You're everything we'll never be, everything we aspire to. We—" "No," Kate interrupted. "You can be better than me. You can be warriors who know when to fight and when to walk away, who understand that the hardest shot is the one you don't take." She looked at each of them in turn. First lesson: respect isn't given. It's earned through action, not appearance. You learned that 2 nights ago. Second lesson: the true measure of a warrior isn't how many people you kill. It's knowing when killing is necessary and when it's murder. Sloane stepped forward, her eyes bright with something that looked like hope. "Teach us. Please. We want to learn, want to be better." Kate handed Brennan the challenge coin she'd given him before, the Admiral McRaven coin she'd carried through 4 deployments. "You earned this. You completed your missions flawlessly when it mattered. You showed you could learn from mistakes. That's what warriors do." She turned toward the tavern, exhaustion pulling at her like gravity. "But if you want the real lesson, here it is. I killed 12 people 2 days ago. Shot them from so far away they never knew I was there. Made shots that physics says shouldn't be possible. Saved 34 lives in the process." She paused at the door. "And tonight, I'll dream about all 12 of them. I'll wonder about their families, their stories, their reasons for being there. I'll add their faces to the 247 others who visit me when sleep won't come. That's the cost of being Wraith 7. That's what you're asking to become." She pulled open the door. "Still want to learn?" The 5 Marines exchanged glances. Then, as one, they nodded. "Yes, ma'am." Kate almost smiled. Almost. "Then first lesson starts tomorrow. How to clean a rifle properly. Because if you can't maintain your weapon, everything else is just talk." She walked into the tavern, leaving them outside, and moved behind the bar like the last 2 days had never happened. Pulled out a glass, started wiping it with methodical precision. Kate Reeves, the bartender, back at work. But the glass trembled in her hand, just slightly, barely visible, but there. Kate set it down carefully, staring at her fingers. They'd been steady in Syria, rock solid while firing left-handed with a dislocated shoulder, unwavering while threading bullets through windows and ventilation shafts. Now in the safety of Garrison's tavern, they shook. She gripped the bar edge, knuckles white. The weight was hitting her. Not guilt. She'd killed legitimate threats, saved 34 lives, done exactly what needed doing. But weight nonetheless. 259 faces now, 20 new ones added to the collection that visited her at 3 a.m. when sleep wouldn't come. Garrison appeared beside her, moving with surprising quiet for a man with a bad leg. He didn't speak, just stood there, present, understanding. "I keep wondering," Kate said quietly, "if Dmitry Volkov had a daughter, if some little girl in Russia is going to grow up without her father because I put a bullet through an 8-centimeter gap at 3 kilometers. "Probably," Garrison said, honest as always. Kate's breath hitched. "How did you live with it, Kuwait, all those years?" "I didn't live with it," Garrison replied. "I lived because of it. 40 men went home to their families because I held that ridge. That's not guilt, that's purpose." He pulled out 2 glasses, poured whiskey into both, slid one to Kate. "You don't drink anymore," he said, "but tonight you toast. To the 34 who get to go home, to the 12 who chose to be threats, to Caleb and your father and every ghost who paid the price so others could sleep safely." Kate picked up the glass, looked at the amber liquid, saw reflections of muzzle flash and blood. "To necessary violence," she said quietly, "and to knowing when it's no longer necessary." They drank. The whiskey burned, and for just a moment the weight felt lighter. Garrison sat at his usual spot, watching her with ancient eyes that had seen too much. "You can't go back," he said quietly. "Not really. Wraith 7 doesn't retire. She just waits for the next call." Before Kate could respond, her encrypted phone vibrated on the bar. New message. She picked it up, read the notification, and felt her blood go cold. The message was simple, direct, and terrifying in its implications. We know who you are. We know what you did. The 247 want justice. You have 96 hours. The families. Kate showed the screen to Garrison. His weathered face hardened. Wagner Group families seeking revenge for Syria? Kate shook her head slowly, memory pulling at her with cruel precision. No. Remember those 70 Taliban fighters I didn't kill in Afghanistan? The ones I let retreat when command ordered me to engage? She pulled up old mission files on her phone, classified documents she shouldn't still have access to, but did because she'd learned where the digital bodies were buried. Turns out 8 of them survived the war, became ISIS commanders, spent the last 11 years building power, resources, and a very specific hatred for the American sniper who killed their friends but spared them. She showed Garrison the intelligence report. Names, faces, current locations. A network of former Taliban who'd transformed into something worse and who'd apparently spent years tracking the ghost who'd haunted them in Afghanistan. I showed mercy, Kate said quietly. I chose to be human instead of a weapon, and now they're coming to kill me for it. The door opened. Brennan, Jameson, Reese, Elliot, and Sloan entered, having apparently decided that waiting outside was pointless. We heard, Brennan said, though Kate hadn't told them anything. Radio chatter from Camp Pendleton, ISIS cell activated in California, targeting former special operations personnel, specifically targeting female operators. He met Kate's eyes. They're coming for you. Kate set down the glass she'd been cleaning, reached under the bar where Garrison kept the Louisville Slugger. Next to it was her rifle case, already back from the Syria mission, weapon cleaned and maintained by Armorer hands while she'd been in transit. She pulled out the rifle, checked the chamber, loaded a magazine with practiced efficiency despite her injured shoulder. Then let them come, she said, her voice carrying the particular tone that marked her as Wraith 7 instead of Kate Reeves. I've killed 259 people. Most of them never saw me coming. But these 8, they know I exist. They've been hunting me. They understand what I am. She looked at the 5 Marines. You wanted lessons? Here's lesson 3. When the enemy brings the fight to you, you don't run. You don't hide. You meet them on ground of your choosing, and you end the threat permanently. Sloan moved to the window, looking out at the quiet California street. How long do we have? 96 hours, Kate replied. 4 days. They'll use that time to prepare, to position assets, to gather intelligence. They want me afraid, want me running. She chambered around in her rifle, the metallic sounds sharp in the quiet bar. But Wraith 7 doesn't run. Wraith 7 hunts. Garrison stood, his old body moving with the determination of someone who'd made a decision. My bar, my town, my friend. They want a war, we'll give them a war they'll regret. He pulled out his old M40A5, the rifle he'd kept cleaned and maintained for 30 years, despite having no official reason to need it. I held the line in Kuwait, I'll hold it here. The 5 Marines looked at each other. Some kind of silent communication passed between them. Then Brennan spoke for all of them. We're in. You taught us about respect, about earning our place. Time to prove we learned. Kate looked at this strange coalition, a 71-year-old Gulf War veteran with a bad leg and steady hands, 5 Marines who'd started as antagonists and become students, and herself, Wraith 7, the ghost who'd tried to retire but kept getting called back to war. 4 days, she said. We used them to prepare, to turn this town into a killing ground, to make them regret bringing the fight here. She moved to the wall of photographs, looking at decades of service members who'd drunk in this bar, who'd shared stories and found brotherhood. Her eyes found the photo from Kuwait, her father in pixelated anonymity, holding his rifle like an extension of his soul. Dad saved 40 in Kuwait. I saved 34 in Syria. Now I save this town. The legacy continues. She turned back to face them, and in her eyes was something that made even Garrison take a step back. Not fear, not anger, something colder, more focused. The look of someone who'd killed 259 people and was prepared to add 8 more to the count. Wraith 7 went dark for 7 years, Kate said quietly. But ghosts don't die, they wait. And when the dead come for the living, she raised her rifle, sighted down the scope at an imaginary target only she could see. The ghost becomes the reaper. Outside, the California night was peaceful. Quiet streets, distant traffic, the ordinary sounds of a world that had no idea a war was coming. Inside Garrison's tavern, warriors prepared for battle. Old and young, male and female, united by the understanding that some threats couldn't be negotiated with, some enemies couldn't be reasoned with, some fights you couldn't walk away from. Kate Reeves had tried to be human, tried to leave the killing behind, tried to believe that bartending and normalcy could replace the purpose she'd found as Wraith 7. But the world had other plans. The ISIS commanders who'd survived her mercy in Afghanistan were coming. 8 professionals with resources and motivation and nothing to lose. They were hunting the ghost who'd haunted them. They were about to learn why ghosts were feared. Kate looked at her rifle, Caleb's promise, and made a different kind of promise. To the town that had sheltered her, to Garrison who'd given her sanctuary, to the 5 Marines who'd learned to respect her, to the memory of her father and the legacy of Wraith. In 96 hours, 8 people would come to kill her. In 96 hours, she would remind the world why Wraith 7 was legend. The war was coming home, and home was where Kate Reeves made her stand.